Hello everyone, and welcome to my complete beginner's guide for Topaz Photo AI. And my name is Chris Parker. I'm a pro landscape and wildlife photographer. And in this video, I've included 17 individual tutorials directly from my masterclass, Topaz Photo AI, Edit Smarter, Edit Better. And the full course includes over 50 lessons, but this video focuses on the first 3 modules, and it's your introduction to Topaz as a purpose-built, intelligent toolset designed to help you restore, enhance, and refine your images with clarity and intention. Now, in this first lesson that's going to follow, I'm going to share a mind shift that will forever change how you think about Topaz Photo AI. And then from there, we're going to continue with some quick start guides to get you started quickly, and then move into the core enhancement tools and explore what each AI model actually does for all of the enhancement tools, so you can stop guessing and start editing with more confidence and control. Now, throughout the video, you may hear references to worksheets and some cheat sheets and downloadable images. Those are part of the full course experience, but even without them, this video will give you everything you need to master the fundamentals and start editing more intentionally. Now, if you would like access to the complete masterclass, including all bonus materials, there's a special discount just for subscribers of this channel, and you'll find that along with timestamps and course details in the description below. So if you're ready to get started, let's do it. Hello, and welcome to the Topaz Photo AI Edit Smarter, Edit Better Masterclass. So thank you for choosing this course to help bring your creative vision to life using the enhancement tools inside Topaz Photo AI. Now, this course was built for 2 kinds of photographers: those who are just getting started with Topaz and want to build a solid foundation, and for those who've already dabbled with the enhancement tools but are ready to stop guessing and start refining with purpose. Now, if you're new to Topaz Photo AI, I'm going to guide you step by step through each enhancement tool, what it does, how it works, and how to create a workflow that fits the way you edit and your creative vision. And if you've used Topaz before, you might be tempted to skip ahead, and that's totally fine. In fact, Module 4 was designed with you in mind. That's where we go from simply using the tools to building a custom system based on what works best for your images and your goals. Because Topaz Photo AI isn't just another editing app. It's a purpose-built environment, part Image Lab, part Refinement Studio. Now, inside the Image Lab, from modules 1 through 3, you'll explore all the enhancement tools, discover the AI models available for each, how to tweak the results for your photographic style, and much more. And then in the Refinement Studio, inside Module 4, you'll run tests, compare results, and gain a deeper understanding of how each tool behaves, helping you fine-tune for your desired outcome. Now, every enhancement tool in your Topaz lab is designed to solve a specific problem, like digital noise, misfocus, blur, or distractions, and each one responds to your input. So this isn't a one-click magic fix. It's a process, and you'll learn how to control it. You'll discover how to test what works, skip what doesn't, and refine your workflow one intentional step at a time. So if you're ready to stop second-guessing your sliders and start editing with clarity and confidence, then welcome to your Image Lab. Let's do it. All right, so before we dive into the tools themselves, let's take a moment to set up how you'll actually work with Topaz Photo AI. So think of this as preparing your Image Lab or getting your environment ready before the real testing and refining begins. Now, the tools don't change. No matter how you bring your images in, Topaz gives you the same enhancement options, but the way you enter the lab, that can shape the rest of your workflow. So we have 3 main entry points. You can use Topaz Photo AI as a standalone app. You can run it as a plugin from Lightroom Classic, or send files in directly from Photoshop. There are other ways to launch it, but in this course, we'll focus on these 3. They're the most common and most reliable paths for photographers who want precision and control. So which one is the best? Well, that all depends on your workflow, because while the tools inside the lab stay the same, the path you take to get there Well, that's what you're choosing right now. So over the next 3 lessons, I'm going to walk you through a quick start guide for each method. You'll see exactly how each one works, and then you can decide which entry point fits the way you already edit, because at the end of the day, this isn't about using every option. It's about picking the one that gets you into the lab, ready to work with 0 friction. And then after that, once you've chosen that, we'll take a quick overview of your Topaz Lab interface. So if you're ready to get started, let's do it. All right, so let's step into your image lab and start with the cleanest, most focused setup using Topaz Photo AI as a standalone app. Now, this workflow gives you full control. You're not relying on Lightroom or Photoshop. Instead, you're going straight to the enhancement lab where everything begins. So go ahead and open the Topaz Photo AI app. And then from here, you can add your images in a few different ways. One is to click on this browse button and select your photos manually from your operating system. Or if you want, you can access the most recent images from over here on the right. But my favorite is to simply click and drag images from an operating system finder window and dropping right onto the interface. And then those images will automatically load into Topaz Photo AI. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is over here on the right, autopilot automatically kicks in, and it acts like an assistant technician scanning the file and automatically applying what it thinks are the right tools to help you enhance it. Now, that might include Denoise, it might be Sharpen, face recovery, or even Upscale, depending on what it detects. But here's the key. Autopilot is just a suggestion, not a decision. It's a smart starting point, but you're still in control. And we're going to dive deeper into how autopilot works and how to customize it in an upcoming lesson. For now, just know it's there to give you a head start. Now, once autopilot is done analyzing your image, you can add these suggestions by clicking on them, and then they'll be added to what is known as your enhancement stack. Or if you don't like the suggestions, you can just manually apply editing tools to your enhancement stack by clicking on this choose something else button, and then you can add them from here. Now, once your tools are added into the stack, you can click on one to access the individual adjustments that you can apply. So that can include selecting a specific AI model and then different sliders to tweak your edits as needed. So think of each tool like precision instruments that are part of your editing lab. Each one is a problem solver, targeted, powerful, and purpose-built. You're not just throwing edits at a photo, you're refining the image one smart choice at a time. Now, when everything looks good and your enhancements are dialed in, it's time to export your image out of the lab. So you're going to click on this export image button down here. You're going to get this new export window where you can then add a prefix or suffix to the file name, which makes it easy to spot which images have been enhanced with Topaz or not. And then you want to choose where to save them to. And then you need to choose your file format. Once you have that, go ahead and click the Save button, and now Topaz will process the image and deliver a clean, enhanced version ready for whatever comes next. All right, so in the next lesson, we're going to explore how this process works inside Lightroom Classic using the Topaz plugin. The tools are the same, the goal is the same, but the path to the lab feels a little different, and you'll see why. If you're using Lightroom Classic to manage and edit your photos, you don't have to change your workflow to use Topaz since it fits right in as a plugin. So once you send your image or images to the Topaz lab and do your precise enhancements, you can then have it automatically return your files back to your Lightroom catalog. And there are 2 main ways to send an image from Lightroom to Topaz, and it all depends on your preferred editing workflow. So we're going to take a quick look at both options now, and then later in the course, we'll go deeper into which method works best for different workflows. So the first option is to select one or multiple images, and then you're going to right-click on any of them. Then you're going to go to Edit in, and choose Edit in Topaz Photo AI. Now you're going to get this new window with some options you need to choose before your photos are sent to the Topaz lab. So these are basically instructions for Lightroom so it knows how and what to send to Topaz. Now this first option is the only one available for raw files, and then the other two options will be grayed out if that's the file format you're starting with. So this first option creates a copy of your raw file with your Lightroom adjustments applied. Now, if you're not starting with a raw file, then you can choose from one of these other two options. So if you choose Edit a Copy, Lightroom will duplicate your original file and apply the edits to that. Now, although you can choose the third option, which will overwrite your original file, it's not recommended since you're never going to get your original file back if needed. All right, so the next thing you need to tell Lightroom is your preferred file format and color space. Now for my images, I usually go with TIFF and ProPhoto, and later in the course I'll explain why, and we'll go into more detail about all of these options. For now, just go ahead and pick JPEG or TIFF and ProPhoto RGB to get started. Click on Edit, and then Lightroom will create those new files and send them into your lab. Now, before we do that, let's check out the second option. Again, pick out one or multiple images, and then this time you have to go up to File, scroll down to Plugin Extras, and click on Process with Topaz Photo AI, and then your files will be automatically sent into Topaz. Now, either method leads to the same tools, the same interface, and the only thing that changes is how your photos get here. Now, in this mode, raw denoise is applied by default, and autopilot may suggest other enhancement tools after it analyzes your image. So if you want to use one of these suggestions, go ahead and click on that tool block, and then it will be added down here in your enhancement stack. Or if you prefer to manually choose your tools, go ahead and click on the Choose Something Else button right here, and then you can select your tool of choice from this new flyout menu. Clicking on it will then add it to your stack over here as well. All right, so the next thing you need to do is click on that tool block to reveal this panel, and then you need to choose from the options to enhance your image. So your first choice should be to pick an AI model that will give you your desired results, and then, if needed, tweak these sliders to fine-tune your edit. All right, so once you're done enhancing all your images, click the Export button down here, and then Topaz will process your file with any enhancements and put that new file back into your Lightroom catalog. So this is seamless, efficient, and keeps everything in one place. So this workflow is perfect if you already manage your images in Lightroom. It lets you enhance with precision without disrupting your workflow. All right, so up next, we're going to walk through the Photoshop workflow and how to make your enhancements fully non-destructive using smart filters. So if you're ready for that, let's do it. If you do your editing in Photoshop, Topaz will fit right in because it works just like any other filter, only this one plugs you into a high-tech editing lab. So we're going to start with a raw file since the JPEG workflow is basically the same once your raw file is fully edited and opened in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and double click on any raw file, and this will automatically launch the Adobe Camera Raw Editor. And then from here, you're going to make your edits. And then once you're happy with how it looks, you're going to click the Open button to bring it into the Photoshop workspace. Now, before we send the image into your Topaz lab, here's a pro tip. You're going to right-click on your image layer and choose Convert to Smart Object. Now, that converts your layer into a smart object, which will basically turn on the lab's control panel. But why does that matter? Because now, when you send the image into the Topaz lab, all the tools and enhancements you apply will be saved as a smart filter. And I'm going to show you the benefit and how this works and much more in just a second. Now, to send the image into your Topaz lab, we're going to head up to the filter menu. We're going to go down to Topaz Lab and choose Topaz Photo AI. Now, once your image loads into Topaz, autopilot will kick in, which is like your assistant technician, and it's going to take over for a moment as it analyzes your photo. So it's going to scan for issues like digital noise, blur, low resolution, and more, and then it's going to suggest the tools it thinks your image will need in order to fix those problems. But don't worry, you're still the lead technician. You can decide to add the suggestions either by clicking on the tool from here or clicking on this button to manually select the tools from this new flyout menu. And now that the tools are added to your enhancement stack over here, it's time to click on one of these blocks to expand the panel to reveal your options for making your image better. So the first thing you should do is choose the AI model that best enhances your photo, and if needed, adjust the sliders to tweak your desired outcome. Now, when you're happy with the results of all your enhancements, go ahead and click the export button down here in the bottom right, and then Topaz will process the image and deliver it right back to Photoshop as a layer with a new smart filter layer applied, which kind of looks like another layer embedded below the original. So let's say you realize the settings that you applied are too aggressive. Well, if you double click the Topaz Photo AI label right here, it will take you back into your lab so you can readjust the settings as needed. How awesome is that? So in a way, this is giving you the ability to work non-destructively, and it's faster than starting over from scratch. All right, next up is a quick overview of the Topaz Lab interface so you know where everything is located. This is where all the magic happens, and the more comfortable you are navigating around this space, the easier it will be to focus on making your smart, intentional edits. So let's take a quick tour around your digital lab with the main preview right here taking up the majority of the interface. So this is where you're going to review your enhancements as they are applied in real time. Now, just above that is this top bar with some useful information, like right here, we have the file name for the currently selected photo. We have a little button right here called Get Help. If you need some technical help, go ahead and click on that. We have our current version of Topaz, the dimensions of the currently selected file, and then this number right here represents how many credits you have left that can be used for rendering your edits in the cloud, and we'll talk more about that later in the course. And then we have this little circle right here. Click on that and you can manage your Topaz account. Next to that, if you see this little icon, that lets you know there's a new updated version of Topaz. So you're going to click on that, download the latest version, install it, and then you'll have the latest version available. Now, just below that, we have our enhancement panel, which you can show or hide by clicking on this icon here. So if you need some more real estate for your preview area, go ahead and collapse that. All right, now let's review what's available in the enhancement panel. So right here, this is your navigator window, and there's a little box inside, which represents where we are currently zoomed in on the image. So if we click and drag around, we can navigate to different parts of the image. Or if you click on the preview, you can do the same thing from here. And the size of this box will change as you zoom in and out. Now, another tool that's inside the navigator is this icon right here, or I should say the crop tool. So click on this icon to reveal the crop window where you can recompose your image, apply the settings, and then it will be adjusted accordingly. Now, just below that, we have autopilot. We talked about that briefly in the previous lessons. You can turn on or off autopilot from here. There's other ways to customize it as well, and we'll go into that more in the later parts of the course. And then we have our suggestions provided by autopilot, which we can add by clicking on the box. And then if we want to add something else that wasn't suggested, click on choose something else, and then you can add that from here. Now, if you want to get rid of something because you added it by mistake, click this little X to remove it, and then everything else will stay as needed. And if you want to actually hide a particular enhancement so it doesn't show up in the preview because you have other edits you want to see, go ahead and hide it with this icon right here. Now, of course, to access the tools within that particular enhancement tool, we're going to click on that box to get this flyout menu where you're going to select your AI model, adjust the sliders to tweak and fine-tune that edit. And we also have a tab here for masking and making selections so we can target where the edits are applied. Again, we'll talk about that later in the course. All right, now the other thing you can do to customize your interface is to click on this top bar right here. We're going to click and drag that panel anywhere we want on our interface. We can also redock by going back until we see these blue outlines, or click on these three dots and click Dock to Sidebar. You can hide it by clicking here or by clicking on the box down here. All right, so down here at the bottom, we have an option to create a preset based on the edits that we applied. We'll talk more about that later on. And then of course, our export button, as well as a quick export option here, is available depending on which method of using Topaz you're using, whether it's standalone, through Lightroom as a plugin, or a filter through Photoshop. All right, so below your preview here, we have our thumbnail strip, and this shows all the images that you've loaded into your current session, whether it's one or multiple images. And if you're not seeing this, just click on this little icon right here to hide or show the thumbnail strip. You can also add images from here if all of them didn't get imported originally, or if you just want to continue adding more to your workflow, you can do that. And if you want to navigate to the other images, click anywhere and drag to the left, or use this slider down here at the bottom. And then of course, to start working on a different image, just click on the thumbnail to load it into the preview. Now there's some useful information on the thumbnails themselves. All of them have this little green dot. That means once you click on them, Autopilot will automatically start analyzing your image. Now, if you've turned that off in preferences, which we'll talk about later, then these green dots will not show up. Now, the other thing you're going to notice here is once you apply an enhancement, you're going to see this little icon right here, the second one. And then the one to the right is the crop tool. So that lets you know that this image has been cropped as well as been processed or edited. So this is a great way to review or see which images have been enhanced and which ones haven't. So this will help you with your workflow, helping you stay focused and know which image needs to be worked on next. Now, another thing you're going to notice is once you hover over an image, you get this little window at the top here, and that's going to list all of the edits applied to that particular image. Again, anything in green means that Autopilot suggested that, and those are the settings that it applied. If you tweaked any of those settings, then it will be gray. Now, over here to the top right of your thumbnail strip are some ways to view the image, to see the before and afters, and to zoom in and out as needed. There's a little menu here for predefined zoom levels as well. And then this first option will show the original file before any enhancements. This one will show all the enhancements applied to the entire image. And then this one will split the screen with the original file on the left and the edits applied on the right. And my favorite is this slider right here, which will allow you to click on this line. And then if you drag back and forth, you'll see the original on the left and then the edits on the right. So everything in the Topaz Lab interface is designed to help you work quickly, cleanly, and with precision. So once you know where everything lives, the tools inside the workshop become a lot easier to master. So in the next module, we're going to start reviewing all of the enhancement tools so you know what they are, what they do, the AI models that are available, and why you might want to work with one versus another, and much, much more. So if you're ready to get acquainted with your editing tools, let's do it. All right, so this is where your journey of discovery begins. by exploring the core enhancement tools inside your Topaz lab. Our goal in this module, and even the next, is simple: discovery. You're going to learn what each enhancement tool does, including the different AI models for each and the additional tools to tweak the final outcome based on your creative vision. You'll also learn when and why you might choose one model over another, so keep in mind that each enhancement is designed to solve a specific image problem like digital noise, sharpness, lighting, clarity, or color, and you may find yourself only using 2 or 3 out of the 9 core enhancement tools available. That's totally fine. This module is here to help you get familiar with all of them so you know what's available and what's worth exploring further. So think of it a lot like an orientation to your editing lab. Each lesson in this module gives you a clear, focused overview of one tool at a time. Now, to assist you, you'll find a downloadable folder of the same images used in the lesson. So feel free to follow along with those images if you would like. However, for the best experience, I recommend using your own images after each lesson to see how these tools respond to your camera sensor, your subjects, and your unique editing needs. And don't forget to print out your discovery worksheets and use them to jot down what each tool does, what settings you want to remember, and how you might use it in your future workflow. This isn't about building that workflow just yet, but this is where you begin understanding the possibilities. So if you're ready to get started, let's do it. Raw denoise gives you a clean, natural starting point by reducing digital noise directly from your camera's untouched sensor data, and it's available only when you bring in a raw file. Now, here's what makes raw denoise different from the other enhancement tools. It kicks in before upscaling, sharpening, or any other edits are applied, and you'll see a message reflecting that at the top of the tools panel right here. So that basically means when using raw denoise, it will better preserve the texture, the depth, and the fine details in your photo, which means you'll end up getting cleaner shadows, more natural edges, and a stronger base for future edits. All right, so let's review the editing tools so you understand what they do, how to use them, and when to use which one when. So we have 2 different AI models, and then depending on the option that you choose, 2 to 3 sliders. So the AI models determine how aggressively the noise is handled, and then the sliders help you fine-tune how that cleanup looks. So let's walk through both of them. So you can think of the AI models as presets for how Topaz cleans your image. So normal is ideal when your image has moderate noise from ISO 1600 or below. So this model does a great job of preserving fine detail while cleaning up the grain, and it's my go-to for most daylight images or any raw file shot in good lighting with a balanced exposure. Strong, on the other hand, is built for more difficult images that were shot at higher ISOs like 3200 and above. Like this one here, I believe I shot it around ISO 10,000. Now, since it's more aggressive in cleaning out the noise, it may soften some of the finer textures, especially in areas like the hair, grass, or fur. Now, if you're not sure which one to start with, I would choose normal first. Start with that one, and then observe how much noise is left. If it still looks rough, switch to strong. All right, so once you've chosen your AI model, the sliders down here will allow you to refine the result. So strength controls how much noise is being removed, and if the grain is really heavy, increasing strength can help smooth things out a little bit. But if you go too far, your textures are going to start to disappear because they're going to smooth out completely, and that's going to leave your image looking unnatural. So if you need to push strength higher, then you can increase the intensity of minor to blur, and that's going to try and bring back some of that detail. However, just like with strength, too much of minor to blur can also degrade your image by introducing digital artifacts. So there's a give and take to balance between removing all the noise, keeping the texture and details, and not introducing artifacts that make your image worse. So you might have to do a little bit of a back and forth between the sliders to find that sweet spot. Now, this last one here will help you remove large grain. So if the grain is really large because you shot it something like, let's say, ISO 25,000 and up, you can use this one for that type of grain. But again, too aggressive will degrade your image. And this one, this slider here is only available in raw strong, not raw normal. You'll see you only have these two sliders here. So just keep that in mind. All right, so raw denoise is all about starting clean without compromising the integrity of your image. So you want your shadows to stay rich and not muddy. You want textures to still look like what they are, like soft feathers, hair, or fine fur. Otherwise, your image will take on an unnatural look. Now, if you're shooting or working with JPEG or TIFF files, then you'll need to use the standard denoise option, which we'll tackle in the next lesson. But before you do that, I recommend grabbing a few raw files with a range of ISOs from, let's say, ISO 800 up to 8000 or higher, and then run them through Topaz and play with both AI models and the sliders to get a feel for the type of results you can expect. If you're working with JPEGs, TIFFs, or any other non-RAW format, then standard denoise is for you. It's designed to reduce digital noise while preserving the texture and personality of your subjects. Now, it doesn't work directly with sensor data like raw denoise does, but it still gives you powerful control over noisy files, especially those shot at high ISOs. Now, when you open a non-RAW file in Topaz Photo AI, Autopilot may auto-magically apply standard denoise if it detects grain or noise in the image. And that's exactly what happened with this image, which I shot at ISO, I think 25,600, something like that. And the noise is really easy to spot via the original preview here on the left. Now, if it doesn't auto-magically add denoise as an enhancement, go ahead and apply it manually if you have some noise that you want to remove. So let's go ahead and check out the different options available for removing noise. So inside the denoise enhancement control panel, you'll find two main tabs. So we have controls plus edit selection. And we're gonna cover this in detail in a future lesson. For now, let's just review your options in the control tab. So your first choice is to choose one of the three AI models, and each is designed to handle different amounts of noise. So normal is great for mild to moderate noise created with ISOs of 1600 or less, and it does an excellent job without softening fine details. Now, strong, on the other hand, is more aggressive, and the softening of textures and details will be more visible. And this one is perfect for ISO shot between 1600 and 10,000. And then extreme is the most powerful model and also the most destructive in terms of destroying textures and details. And that's going to alter the character of your image when it starts smoothing out those textures. But it was designed for heavily degraded files shot beyond ISO 10,000. And yes, it can work wonders, but it may smooth things out a little more than you would like. So just keep that in mind, that these aren't hard rules. They're just guidelines. What matters most is how your image looks after the AI model is applied. So as you try each one, pay attention to the textures, the edges, and shadow areas, and then ask yourself whether or not the noise feels under control, and are you still seeing important detail? If not, try a different model. All right, so next are the sliders that you can use to tweak the cleanup process, and these are similar to the options available in raw denoise. Strength controls how aggressive the noise reduction is, and as you increase the intensity, the more details that you'll lose. Set it too low though, and you'll still see grain where you don't want it. So if you have to go higher, try and use the original detail option to bring back detail. However, again, it's possible you can degrade your image if you go too far. So again, it's kind of a balancing act between these two sliders. So noise reduction isn't about making everything look perfect. It's about restoring clarity without removing character. Now, whether you're working with wildlife images and low light or need to boost the ISO because you need a faster shutter speed, the goal is to clean things up without making your image flat. Now, once you get used to it, you'll likely want to denoise all your images because even subtle noise cleanup can make an image feel sharper without sacrificing the quality of your creative vision. And now that you've cleared away the digital clutter, it's time to make your image even sharper. So in the next lesson, we're going to explore the Sharpen enhancement options that are going to recover edge detail, restore clarity, and refine softness. And I'll share pro tips without going overboard. But first, just as you did in the last lesson, import several images at different ISO settings and try all 3 AI models and test each slider to see how your photos will respond. Not every image is going to be tack sharp. Sometimes you just miss focus by a hair, and sometimes your subject moves and you didn't freeze the action as intended because your shutter speed was too slow. And then there's your lenses. Some are just soft by nature, especially at wide apertures. Whatever the reason, Topaz Photo AI Sharpen Enhancement was designed to help. Now, this isn't about over-processing or making everything look unnaturally crisp. It's about recovering the moment and bringing back the detail that helps the image look as you had envisioned and doing it in a way that still looks natural. All right, let's jump into the Sharpen enhancement tool here, and we're going to take a look at all 7 AI models to discover the purpose of each, since they're all designed to tackle a different kind of blur or softness. So standard is perfect for general softness caused by a less than sharp lens. It's not going to do anything dramatic, but that's the point. It gives just enough crispness to make a good image look great. Now, strong is the next step up. If your image is noticeably blurry or just didn't quite land in focus, this can help. It's more aggressive, which means it can also create halos or rough transitions if pushed too far. So be careful with this one. All right, so lens blur is a lifesaver for portraits. When your focus point is off, let's say it landed on the nose instead of the eyes, lens blur can bring back those details. So in this image of my daughter, that's exactly what happened. Lens blur brought her back into focus, her eye back into focus. And I was able to save one of my favorite images of her, but I have to admit, it's not perfect, is it? So in a second, I'm going to share a pro tip that will end your frustration with Topaz and any other editing app for that matter, based on the zoom level you're reviewing your images at. First, let's check out the rest of the AI models. So lens blur is going to handle even stronger blur, and it tries to apply corrections more evenly across the image. But in my experience, I still lean towards the original version since it produces the type of results that I like. So next we have motion blur, which is built for action. So if you've got a moving subject or a slight case of camera shake, this AI model will try to reverse the direction of the blur. Now, it's not magic, but when the movement is subtle, it can make a big difference. Next is natural, which has the softest touch. It doesn't push sharpness too hard. It's great when you want a gentle polish, enough to add clarity, but not so much that the sharpening becomes visible. And then refocus is for those shots where the focus point was just barely off. So think of it as a little nudge. It helps recover texture and edge detail that just feels out of reach. Now, once you've picked an AI model, you're going to use the strength slider to tweak the sharpening. So this controls how much sharpening is applied, but sharpening is kind of personal. Sometimes I will even dial it back a little bit based on what autopilot suggested, especially if it starts looking a little too crunchy. Other times I might nudge it up just a bit to bring out a little extra snap. So there's no right answer to how much sharpening, but to avoid over sharpening, always check the fine textures like skin, fur, hair, etc., and look for halos, artifacting, or edge awareness, since that's where over sharpening shows up first, and then dial it back if needed. Now, one of the best ways to make yourself go mad from frustration is to make editing decisions above 100% preview. So if you zoom in too far, let's say 400, 800, 200%, you're going to start chasing problems that no one else will ever see, even yourself. And it's easy to fall into this trap because you're going to see one little flaw and then suddenly you're spiraling out of control because you're trying to fix something that won't be visible unless you're zoomed in at 101% or higher. And before you know it, an hour of editing has gone by. So get in and fine tune at 200%. And then make your final decision at 100%, or even better, at full size, since that's how everyone will view your image. All right, so although sharpening is powerful and will make most of your images better, it's not a magical fix for all out of focus images. However, as you'll discover, when you run different levels of blurry images through your Topaz lab, it will save more than you might expect. So now it's your turn. Go through your library of photos, find some with different levels of blurriness, test all the AI models and sliders to see for yourself how magically delicious sharpening with AI can be. And I recommend having the sharpening cheat sheet handy for reference. Then, once you're done experimenting, you'll be ready for the next lesson where we're going to explore the Adjust Lighting enhancement. This next enhancement tool is one most of you will probably never need to use, and that's because if you're already doing your editing in Lightroom or Photoshop, you're probably already fixing the exposure before bringing those images into Topaz Lab for enhancing. So if you're already adjusting the exposure earlier in your workflow, feel free to skip this enhancement tool overview. For everyone else, let's take a quick look at what you can do with Adjust Lighting. So let's go ahead and open it up, and you're going to find two different AI models to choose from. Version 1 is a very simple adjustment that allows you to increase or decrease the brightness of your image based on the intensity that you set with the strength slider. On the other hand, version 2 is much more advanced and gives you more control over the tonal values of your image. So just like in version 1, you can adjust the overall brightness of your image with the exposure slider. But with version 2, you can also target the highlights and/or shadows to make those brighter or darker based on the needs for that particular image. So if you need a quick targeted exposure, especially for shadows and highlights, version 2 is the better option. Now, version 2 also offers a color correction option that will provide a small amount of, well, color correction, which it will auto-magically adjust when you turn on this switch. Now, if you want to retain the original colors in your image, go ahead and disable this if it's turned on for whatever reason. All right, so next up, we're gonna take a quick look at Balanced Color, which is a better option for color correction. Color does more than define how your image looks. It shapes how it feels. Even the slightest shift can turn an image from cold to warm or from neutral to bold. That's where the Balanced Color tool comes in. This enhancement gives you a clean, simple way to adjust color temperature without diving into complex grading tools. And while it may look minimal, the impact can be significant. However, just like with Adjust Lighting, most of you will not be using this since you're already doing your color adjustments in Lightroom or Photoshop. Either way, let's explore how this works. So inside of Balanced Color, you will find two sliders. temperature and opacity. So the temperature slider shifts the overall tone of the image. So if you move it to the left, that's going to cool things down a little bit. And then if you move it to the right, that's going to warm up the image. So this is especially helpful when you want to fix subtle color casts like blue shadows on snow or skin tones that lean too orange, or maybe the scene just doesn't match the mood that you remember. So this slider lets you nudge the image back into alignment. However, as you can see right now, it's too intense. In that case, you can either dial it down with the temperature slider, or you can use the opacity slider to blend in that adjustment into the image, which is going to give you a much more natural look versus just using temperature and opacity at 100%. So it's going to blend it in much better than not doing that at all. So if the color shift feels too strong, just dial it back with opacity until it feels natural again. So in the next lesson, we're going to take a look at the Upscale tool, which is designed to enlarge your image without losing quality. It doesn't stretch pixels, it rebuilds them. Sometimes your image just isn't big enough for the current project that you're working on. It could be because you're working with a scanned photo, or maybe you had to crop in really tight, or maybe you're prepping for a print enlargement and the current resolution isn't enough. Whatever the reason, this is when the Upscale tool will blow your mind, because it's not just making it larger, it's how and what Topaz does during the upscale that makes it magically delicious. So instead of just stretching the pixels to make the image larger like most apps do, Topaz uses its AI technology to add detail that wasn't there before as it upscales, and this creates a more natural, detailed version of your image at its new size. All right, so once your image opens in Topaz, just like always, Autopilot will kick in, analyze your image, and if it determines that the file can benefit from upscaling, it will auto-magically apply a scaling percentage up to 6x. However, you're not locked into that. You can choose your own scale, whether that's 2x, 4x, or if you want 6x, press the max button. You can also click on the custom button here and then type in your own scale option. So let's say you want 3x instead of 2x, hit the number 3 key and then enter or return, and it will upscale accordingly. Now below that, if you need something more specific, you can type in your exact dimensions, whether it's pixels, inches, or centimeters. So if we select pixels, it's going to automatically default to 72 dpi for the resolution. So let's say you need to post 1000 pixels wide, or you need an image 1000 pixels wide to post online. You're going to type in 1000 for the width, hit your tab key, and then Topaz will automatically update the height based on keeping that image in the same aspect ratio. So 667 for this particular image. Now, if we switch to inches or centimeters, we can adjust the resolution based on what we need for our output. 72, again, is for online, 240 or 300, depending on the needs of your printer or your professional lab. Refer to your manual or ask the lab what resolution they need, and then type that in here. Now, let's say we want an image that is 20 inches wide. So I'm going to type in 20, hit the tab key, and then Topaz will update the height accordingly. So now we can see that the scale is 3.33x for inches. Now, just below that, once you have your size, you want to pick your AI model to give you the best quality image possible. And we have 6 different AI models to choose from. Each one is designed for different types of images or files. So let's take a look at each one so you understand what each one is designed for, and then that will give you a better head start on choosing one versus another. So standard version 1 is the original model. It's reliable and clean. So use this when you want a solid enlargement without too much enhancement. It's a safe starting point for most images. Now, standard version 2 builds on the original model with better texture and realism, especially for feathers, fur, and foliage. Now, low resolution is designed for, well, low-res files that are pixelated or heavily compressed. So it's perfect for older files or scanned prints. And this model helps smooth out that pixelness, or that blockiness, I should say, and rebuilds detail that looks more natural. Now, high fidelity version 1 is very subtle, and it enhances what's already there without trying to invent or add new detail. So use this when the original is already strong and of a high quality, and you want to maintain the original natural look. Version 2 of high fidelity is basically the same, except it has better edge and texture handling, and it's ideal again for high quality enlargements where accuracy matters, like detailed landscapes or product images. Then we have graphics, which is perfect for logos, text, illustrations, and charts. And it's going to keep lines sharp and avoids softening flat color areas. So if your photo includes any sort of embedded text or graphic detail, this might be the right fix for that photo. Now, once you've selected your AI model, you may see up to 3 different sliders depending on the AI model that you selected. So minor denoise provides a bit of noise reduction, and you can use it when the image has a little bit of grain or leftover noise, especially in skies or skin or flat areas. But if you've already used raw denoise earlier in your workflow, you probably don't need to use that. Next, we have minor deblur, which applies gentle sharpening, which is useful if your original was just a little soft or if the focus is slightly off, but I wouldn't use this in place of sharpening. It's more of a finishing layer. All right, so next we have fixed compression, which targets digital artifacts like banding, halos, or pixelization that can occur with low-res files. So if you're working with a clean TIFF or RAW, you can skip this one. All right, so upscaling gives you room to crop in tighter and the flexibility to enlarge an image you thought was too small to use. And now it's your turn to try out upscaling on your own images, or if you don't have any, locate this image in your resources folder. And then in the next lesson, you'll discover how to enhance text in an image. So sometimes the story isn't just in the photo, it's in the words inside the photo. So maybe a road sign, maybe a handwritten note, or a product label, whatever the source. When there's text in your image, one thing matters most: readability. And here's the challenge. As soon as you sharpen, upscale, or clean up digital noise, that text can start to fall apart. So the edges become blurry, letters lose their shape, and the clarity gets lost in the process. And that's where the Preserve Text tool becomes essential, because it's designed to protect the written word, to make sure the message comes through clean and clear. Whether that message is official or sentimental, it deserves to be seen. So Preserve Text is a precision enhancement built specifically for photos that contain readable type. It's not trying to enhance the entire image. It only focuses on the areas with text and sharpens them selectively. So the goal here isn't over-processing, it's to add clarity and preservation. All right, so once you enable the Preserve Text tool, to get the pop-out menu here with all the options, you're gonna notice that Topaz automatically selects the text in your image. However, if it's selecting text you don't want to enhance, for example, in this image, I purposely shot with a shallow depth of field to blur out all the cards behind the first row, and I don't necessarily want to sharpen the text behind those. So we can go into Edit Selection, select our Subtract brush, and then remove the selection that is targeting the Preserve Text enhancements. So now just the text in the front row here will be targeted with our edit. So let's go back into controls here and take a look at our options. So we have 2 main AI models, low resolution and noisy. So lower resolution is the go-to AI model for small or pixelated text like scanned receipts, old screenshots, or compressed files where the letters have lost their edge. So it works by tightening up those blurry outlines and restoring clarity without making the text look artificial. Now, noisy is the one that's best when you have a higher res file like this one, and or when your image has a lot of noise. So if there's digital noise, grain, texture, all bleeding into the letters, this model will smooth out those imperfections while protecting the form of each character. And it is good for high ISO images, uneven lighting, or anything scanned under less than ideal conditions. Now below that, we have our strength slider that will allow you to fine-tune how much of the enhancement is applied. And you might find that just a subtle bump is all you need, because too much and the text can start to look a little too perfect. So the goal is always the same. Make the text easier to read without making it stand out unnaturally. All right, next we're going to shift gears to the final enhancement in this module with the crop tool, which is a simple but powerful tool for reframing your story with purpose and precision. So if you're ready for that, let's do it. Sometimes the most powerful change you can make to a photo isn't about pixels. It's about placement and the composition and the balance. So that's where the crop tool comes in. And while it may seem basic on the surface, it's one of the quickest ways to clarify your message before you even touch an enhancement, because sometimes the story in your image is buried under distraction. So cropping gives you the chance to bring that story forward. That being said, cropping isn't just about cutting out unwanted space. It's about guiding the viewer's eye and bringing attention to your subject. It's the fastest way to make your photo feel more intentional, and doing it early before sharpening or denoising means your edits will be more targeted. All right, so you're gonna find the crop tool inside the navigator tool right here. Click on this crop icon to open the cropping interface. And this brings up your cropping overlay that you can see on your image here, which consists of a 9-grid overlay, which is similar to the rule of thirds. So if you want to apply your crop to that specific composition rule, this overlay makes that easier to do. So we have some different options here in the right panel for adjusting the crop based on aspect ratios, size, and more. So under aspect ratio, we can select from predefined aspect ratios, or we can select custom and type something in. And then under size, we have some other predefined options to choose from, or if you want to type in a specific size in pixels, you can do that from here. All right, so another thing you can do is you can click and drag around your image to create a custom aspect ratio if lock aspect ratio is turned off, which it is right now. But if you want to keep that same aspect ratio as you crop in tighter, go ahead and turn on this switch. And now when you click a corner or a side, drag in or out, it's going to keep that aspect ratio. So if you want something more custom, turn it off. If you want the same aspect ratio, turn it on. All right, the other thing you can do is click on the inside of the overlay and then navigate around to different parts of the image to crop in or out anything that you don't want in the photo or do want in the photo. The other thing you can do is you can type in a specific angle if the image is crooked or if you want to rotate it for whatever reason. So type in the number and hit the enter or return key and it will rotate it, or drag your mouse over the outside corner, any corner is fine, or even a side, click and drag, and then that will change the angle, and you can then use these lines to place them on the horizon to make sure that your image is straight. All right, so once your composition is locked in, you need to click the apply button, and then that will be applied to your image and you will be taken back to the main Topaz interface. From here, you can continue working with enhancements knowing that the composition is locked in. Now, it's a small change that sets the tone for all the edits that follow. Now, while it may feel simple, don't overlook this tool because sometimes all your photo needs is a little reframing. And now that you've explored all the core enhancement tools in your image lab, it's time to look at what happens when things go off track. So in the next module, we're going to move into Topaz's repair and restoration tools that are designed to help you recover details, remove distractions, and bring damaged files back to life. So if you're ready for that, let's do it. Every photo has potential, but some need more than just an enhancement. They need a second chance. That's where this module comes in. Inside your digital lab, this is the repair station. It's where you bring softness back into structure, erase distractions that don't belong, and clean up the small flaws that time or a rushed capture left behind. Now, these aren't tools you're going to use on every image, but when the moment matters and the image is close but not quite there, these are the tools that can make the difference. Now, just like in the last module, you'll find discovery worksheets to help you track what each repair tool does and when it might be useful in your workflow. Now, in this module, we're going to explore the 4 restoration tools that includes face recovery for bringing small, out-of-focus faces back to life, super focus for images that couldn't be saved with standard sharpening AI models, remove for erasing distractions without interrupting your editing workflow, dust and scratch for restoring scanned photos or digital files that have collected imperfections over time. And each tool uses AI in a different way, and each one is designed to help you restore more of what matters without losing the essence of what made the image worth saving in the first place. Now, if you would like to use the same files I'm using throughout this module, you can download them via the link below this video. But just like before, I encourage you to test each tool on your own photos after watching each lesson. That's where the learning really sticks, and you'll start to notice patterns in how Topaz processes your photos, and then it will be easier to build a workflow that works for you. By the end of this module, you'll know what each repair tool does, when to use it, and why it matters. So welcome to the repair station. If you're ready to discover these 4 tools, let's do it. I don't know about your photos, but not all of mine start off perfect. So I get the composition right, the light is beautiful, and the moment is real, but the face, the one that matters most, just isn't sharp. So maybe it's soft from being scanned from a print, maybe the file is low res, whatever the reason, that's where Recover Faces comes in. This tool is designed to do one thing and do it well. It reconstructs facial detail when it's missing or muddied, helping you bring the human presence in your photo back into focus. Now, this isn't a skin filter or a retouching tool. It's more like a sculptor, rebuilding structure, reshaping soft edges, and restoring the soul of a face that felt a little too far gone. Now, for a quick warning, if your portrait is already sharp, leave this tool alone. In fact, if Autopilot scans your image and doesn't recommend Recover Faces, there's probably a reason, and that's because it may detect that the face or faces are already sharp, and enhancing something that's already detailed can actually backfire. So instead of improving the image, it will make it worse. So as a general rule, if it doesn't need help, don't force the fix. This tool is about rescue, not routine enhancement, but when it does need help, this tool can be a game changer. All right, so after opening the flyout menu of options, the first thing you should check is to make sure the faces you want to enhance are selected. So let's head over to Select Faces and confirm all are selected. And these little yellow boxes around the faces represent the enhancement zones. Now, if you know one or more don't need to be enhanced, click on that box to deactivate the enhancement from being applied to that face, which will keep the focus where it belongs and helps prevent over-editing faces that are already sharp. Also, if a face is turned away, blocked by something, or simply too small, it may not get detected. When that happens, you won't see a yellow box and you won't be able to apply the enhancement. There's no manual override either, so don't spend any time searching for something and trying to force it. It's not going to be found. All right, so in the Controls tab, you'll find 2 different versions to work with your faces. Generation 1 provides some basic options here. We have our strength slider to increase or decrease the intensity of the rebuilding of the faces, as well as 2 additional zones that will target the hair and the neck. And if you're finding that the results you're getting are not satisfactory, try turning these off to see if that improves the recovery of the faces. And in generation 2, we have 2 additional options. We have realistic and creative. So realistic aims for subtle enhancement with minimal artifacts. Creative is a little bolder in how it rebuilds facial features, and I find version 2 with realistic gives me better results versus the previous version. And I found that this is exceptional for all types of faces, whether it's family photos, travel portraits, scanned images of old prints, or anything where expression matters most. And the magic of this tool isn't about technical sharpness, it's about emotional clarity. It helps you preserve the presence of the people in your photos, not just their outlines. And it brings the spark back into their eyes. It brings a dignity to old photos, and it helps you tell a fuller story. Now, in the next lesson, you're going to explore super focus for those images you think can't be saved because they're too blurry. Not every image can or should be saved, but some, they deserve a second chance. So super focus is the most aggressive sharpening tool in your Topaz lab. It's built for the moments when standard sharpening just doesn't cut it, when your subject is noticeably out of focus and previous AI sharpening falls short. So keep in mind that this isn't the tool that you reach for when an image is just a little soft. This is your last resort option with the potential to turn a blurry photo into something usable. So super focus is different from the regular sharpen enhancement tool because it doesn't just enhance edges or boost clarity. It uses generative AI to rebuild missing detail. So let's check out the super focus enhancement tools. And once you add it to your stack, you will then get this new interface window. Now, before we get into the enhancement tools, I have some bad news and some good news. First, the bad news. Not all computers can use this feature. So if this blue render button down here at the bottom is kind of grayed out, that means your system doesn't meet the minimum requirements for super focus. So this tool is very demanding and it leans heavily on your graphics card to run properly. So I can't use it on my iMac that is running the old Intel chips. However, I have a MacBook Pro that runs an M2 chip, which is compatible with this feature. And now for the good news. For those of you who can't run super focus locally, there's another option here called Cloud Render. And we're going to explore Cloud Render in detail in the next module. For now, let's just do a quick overview of the features inside of super focus. So you're going to notice at the very top here, there are 2 versions to choose from. So super focus version 1, this version takes a heavy-handed approach by applying aggressive sharpening across the whole image to recover detail where possible. So think of it like a sledgehammer. It works best on photos that are obviously out of focus, but it doesn't discriminate. So it sharpens everything, even areas that might not need it. Like in this image, I don't want the background sharpened, but it will do so in version 1. So that means you sometimes will get halos, edge artifacts, or weird textures in places like that, especially, like I said, in backgrounds or smooth surfaces. So for some images, it still works well, just not for images like this. So version 2 is a little better. Actually, it's a huge upgrade. And you may notice that this version, unlike the first, has a strength slider. And that offers more finesse, and the results tend to be more natural and realistic when you're able to fine-tune as needed. Now, another improvement with this version is instead of hitting the entire image equally, it evaluates each region and adapts the intensity based on what it thinks is the subject versus the background. So that means sharper results where you need them and fewer problems in the areas that you don't. And it also does a better job of preserving skin texture and fine details. So for portraits, this version is much better. Now, another bonus is it's much faster than version 1. So for this image, it's saying it's going to take around 1 minute and 27 seconds to render, at least in the cloud. And then in version 2, it's going to take 42 seconds. So that's around 50% faster. So when you activate Super Focus, it will default to version 2 most of the time, but you can always switch back to version 1 to compare. So if your image has problems with version 2, switch to version 1 and see how it behaves, and then compare to see which one gives you the results you want. Just keep in mind that no version is perfect, and it just depends on the image. That being said, Topaz has this little message right down here at the bottom, and it basically says that this is what Super Focus is used for, or at least the types of images that work best with Super Focus. So they're basically saying, as I recommended with Recover Faces, that it works on soft or out of focus images, and it's not recommended for images that are already sharp. All right, so another option we haven't gone over yet is the focus boost options up here at the top. And these settings tell Topaz how aggressive it should be in trying to rebuild the missing detail. So it's designed for images that are very blurry. And basically what it does is it will downscale your image to a smaller version, then upscale it back to the original size. And then during that process, the AI has an easier time identifying what's missing and fills in the gaps using the generative AI model. So you're not just sharpening the blur, you're actually telling Topaz to reconstruct what might have been there. So think of these options as increasing the intensity of sharpening, with none being set as the default. So minor adds a light focus boost, and it does so in a more controlled way compared to major. So think of major like a rescue mode for super duper out of focus images. So this model is very aggressive in reconstructing your image in order to recover serious blur or even motion softness. So if you have an extremely soft image, you might want to consider this setting before tossing the file and giving up on it. Now, under post-processing, you can help Topaz out by targeting the most important subject in your image versus letting it try to figure it out on its own. So right now it is selecting everything, and I can just target the subject by selecting that selection here. All right, so I'm going to switch to my iMac now because there's another feature that you might want to utilize, and that is to preview what the render might look like. And it's not exact, but it will give you an indication if the settings you chose are doable, and you can do that via this little box here, which is automatically selected for you when you hover over your image. So to target an area in your image for that preview, just click in that area. And just be prepared to wait for that preview to render, and if all is a go, click the render option that you would like to go with, whether it's cloud or locally on your computer. All right, so I have one more pro tip to share, and that is once Super Focus is done rendering its edit, you may want to further refine the area being targeted with that edit. For example, in this image of my daughter, everything is in focus except for her eye. So if we go into the edit selection, we can see that Super Focus is targeting more than just the eye. Since those areas don't need to be fixed, I'm going to use my erase tool here, and that's my brush that I can then paint over the areas that I don't want to target, so it's just applied to her eye and not all these other areas in red. So just keep that in mind. You don't always want to fix things that are not broken. Now it's your turn to put Super Focus to the test. So find one of your blurriest images and see if it can be saved. And then in the next lesson, we're going to check out how to retouch your images with the Remove tool. So we've all been there. You line up a great image, get the light just right, capture the moment, and then after you get home, you spot a tourist in the background. or something random that crept into the frame that you didn't notice before is there. Or sometimes it's a small thing like dust spots. Either way, they all pull attention away from the story you're trying to tell, and that's when you need the remove tool to retouch your photo. So it works a lot like a smart healing brush, but with AI doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Now, if you're using Lightroom or Photoshop, I believe their generative AI retouching tools are much better than what Topaz offers, and they're significantly faster. So if you don't use Adobe products or another app for retouching, then you'll benefit from this tool in the standalone app. Now, here's something important to keep in mind. Once you use the remove tool, Topaz locks in your other edits, and this means you won't be able to go back and make changes to any other enhancements that you applied, like denoise, sharpening, or anything else. So be sure your other enhancements are dialed in before you use this tool, and that's why I recommend doing your retouching last. Now, just like with some of the other editing enhancements we've been applying, once you select remove, it's going to open up a new window and interface with your options for targeting the areas that need to be retouched. Now, by default, you're going to get this regular round brush that you can target an area to be retouched by painting over that area, and then you get this red mask. So you can change the color of that mask by clicking on this box and then choosing your color from here. You can change the opacity of that mask to be more or less opaque by typing in a new number here. And then in this menu, you have an object selection brush that's a little bit more intelligent. And when you hover over an area, let's say this boulder here, it's going to auto detect the edges of that object. And then you can click in that area to make that selection of that object. Now, for a scene like this, with a lot of fine detail, it doesn't work as well as a regular brush. So depending on your image, you may or may not want to try the object selection brush. You can also subtract from your mask overlays by selecting the erase tool here. You can increase or decrease the size of your brush here as well. And then painting over with the erase tool will remove that selection from the mask. Once you've selected all the areas that need to be targeted with retouching, you're going to select your speed versus quality slider here. And if you want better results, you're going to go higher on the quality scale. However, the higher the quality, the slower it takes for Topaz to retouch that area. So if you're in a hurry, lower that quality or that speed lower, but you may not get the results you want and you may need to redo it. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to 12 for now. Once you have it locked in, go ahead and click the remove button. Topaz will do its magic and retouch those areas. Once it's done processing, go ahead and click Save Changes to get back to the original interface. And you'll notice right under the Remove tool here, we have the Sharpen enhancement that I had applied previously. And as you can see, it is locked out. I can no longer access the Sharpen tool to tweak it. So that's why I recommend doing your retouching last and then apply your denoise and sharpening once that is done. All right, now it's your turn to see how well the remove tool works for retouching. So grab a few images with some distractions and put it to the test. After that, you'll be ready to explore the dust and scratch repair tools in the next lesson. Some photos come with a little bit of history, and your prints or negatives might be littered with scratches and dust spots, and after scanning them to be retouched digitally, it's time to make them new again. And that's when you'll want to reach for the dust and scratch tool, since it was built for those moments when the photo is worth saving, but the surface flaws are getting in the way. So this tool is designed to remove dust spots, fine scratches, and even some subtle scanning artifacts without softening the image or requiring hours of cloning and healing. Now, just like with Super Focus, you'll notice once you activate dust and scratches, it has higher system requirements and will not work on all computers, and instead you'll need to process it via the cloud like I have to on my iMac. However, on my MacBook Pro, it's not a problem. So the first thing you'll notice is once you click the Process on Computer button right here, it just starts working. There are no sliders or model choices to fuss over. Topaz automatically analyzes the image and begins cleaning up those surface level issues using AI. Now, once the initial processing is complete, you'll gain access to the healing brush, and then you can zoom in and paint over any remaining trouble spots like larger scratches or stubborn marks that didn't fully clear in the first pass. And the brush applies changes automatically as you go. No need to hit apply or render, just paint and review. Now, just a quick note that this tool is still in beta, and in the example that I'm using, it didn't completely clean up the deeper scratches, so it may take extra time and brushing to get it right. As it improves, I'll revisit this lesson with updates. Now that you've seen what each enhancement tool can do, it's time to get more hands-on if you haven't already. So grab your discovery worksheets, choose a few of your own images, and then run them through all the enhancement tools by trying different settings, compare results, and make notes on what improves your photos and what doesn't. This isn't about finding the best setting, it's about understanding what works for you, your style, your subjects, your images, and your goals. Because in the next module, we're going to turn those discoveries into a workflow that fits seamlessly into your editing process. So take your time, test, compare, and reflect. And when you're ready, I'll see you in the next module. All right, so the next step to take your Topaz lab skills to the next level and create better images is the full masterclass. And there's a special discount for subscribers, so click the link in the description for more information. Thanks for watching and have an awesome day.